You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. My name is Eden, and I invite you to embark on a journey with me to explore the practical and spiritual edges of the unknown for the purpose of allowing you to embody and empower yourself uniquely as you are and to intentionally create and live a life of freedom and fulfillment. Each week, I am going to discuss topics such as energetics, reality creation, manifestation, astrology, tarot, and more to help empower you to live beyond perceived limitations and to practically design your life so it feels like absolute magic every step of the way. Let's dive in. Well, hello, brilliant soul. Today's mind seed is one that has the potential to press either gently or sharply against something inside of you. And I want to honor that possibility from the very beginning. This one might tingle, it might sting, and it also might be the elixir that helps to set you free. I want to invite you to consider that no matter how good your intentions are, no matter how much truth you speak, no matter how much compassion you practice or growth you commit to, you still might be cast as the villain in someone else's story. And there is ultimately nothing you can do to force a change in that perception. I don't know if you've felt this before, but I most definitely have. The ache of knowing your heart is pure, your intentions are thoughtful, your words are careful, and yet someone still walks away painting you in distasteful colors that don't even come close to representing who you are. Maybe you were too much for them. Maybe they don't see your value. Maybe you took up space they didn't want you to take. Maybe you reflected something back to them that they weren't ready to see. And maybe, just maybe, the version of you that lives in their mind has more to do with them than it does with you. But here's where the ache deepens in our wiring to want to correct it, to fix the misunderstanding, to soften the perception, to just do enough so maybe they can finally see us clearly. And what if they never do? What if they're not meant to? What if your sacred truth doesn't require their agreement? You could spend your entire life shape-shifting, bending over backwards, triple-checking your explanations, offering disclaimers for every single choice you make. And still, if someone wants to see you as difficult, they will. If someone wants to reduce you to a single moment, a single mistake, a single messy reaction, or even a group of them, they will. It's not personal. It's perception. And perception is made of so many things. It's formed through trauma, through ego, unspoken resentment, projections, and parts of the psyche that want to feel safe by having someone else to blame. Along the way, we may become the container someone tries to pour their pain into. And even though it hurts, even though it's unfair, that doesn't mean it has anything to do with your worth or your magic. So a truth check is found in this next sentiment, that detachment is not apathy, but pure devotion to the truth of who you are. And to clarify, when I say detachment, I don't mean numbing out or pretending that it doesn't hurt to be perceived as a villain when you're literally anything but. When I say detachment, I am meaning the sacred act of reclaiming your center and essentially choosing not to live your life trying to manage the narrative that someone else has decided to write about you. Detachment is letting someone misunderstand you without needing to rush in and fix it. Detachment is trusting your own heart, even when someone is loudly narrating a different and distorted version of your story. It's about saying, I know who I am, and I am not going to bleed myself dry trying to prove it to someone who's committed to not seeing it. This isn't coming from a place of bitterness, but maturity, sovereignty, and love for who you are. Because when you refuse to let someone else's story define your self-image, your power becomes magnetic, rooted, and unshakable. There is a nuance that I do want to address here before we get too deep into the concept. Because yes, on the one hand, it's definitely possible that they've cast you as a villain because they're unwilling to look at their own stuff. And it's also possible that something you did really hurt them. And no, having hurt someone, especially on accident, doesn't mean that you're bad or wrong or broken. It just means you're human. And being human is a journey and a process of learning, which means that you're going to get it wrong sometimes. You're going to disappoint people. Your values, your opinions, your perspectives will clash, and there will likely be power struggles, especially with the people that you love most. And once you've met your mistake by taking accountability, having offered a genuine apology, and once you've reflected, integrated, and grown, your work then is not to carry their grudge. It's not your job to wear their judgment like a tattoo across your forehead. Because when we succumb to being responsible for someone else's inability to see something from a new and fresh perspective, we lock ourselves in a prison of people-pleasing when the freedom is in letting go. I know this well, and I've fallen into this habit many times. It makes matters worse that the act of people-pleasing is often disguised as a virtue, one that's whispering to you that it's selfish not to meet others, that all it takes is just one more effort, one more explanation, one more way to show them that you're not who they say you are. But the cost of people-pleasing is your peace, your joy, your energy, and your presence. It's also essentially costing you a life, especially the fulfilling and empowered iteration of the life that you're wanting to create. You don't need to convince anyone of your goodness. Let them think what they want to think. Let them tell the story they need to tell themselves. That's their business. Yours is choosing to live your truth and continuing to grow, change, and evolve over time. And who knows, maybe they will see the evolution of you, but it won't be because you need them to. Consider this. What if being cast as the villain in someone else's story actually means you're doing something right? Because in many cases, as long as we're acting in integrity and with honor, this could be a sign that you're excelling at it, reclaiming your voice, refusing to participate in dynamics that ask you to shrink. It could be a sign that you're setting a boundary and evolving beyond the role you were expected to play. People don't always like it when you outgrow their version of you, and their discomfort is not your fault. You do not, under any circumstances, need to dull your light to ease someone else's eyes. So don't become who they say you are. Don't believe the narrative being thrown upon you, because the shadow side of being cast as the villain can be a tendency to carry ourselves with guilt, to speak from a place of apology, or to live from a posture of defensiveness. But you are not the projection that someone else placed on you. You are not your worst moment. You are not a rumor. You are not a reputation. You are not a mistake that's frozen in time. You are the current, evolving, tender, layered, growing being that exists right here, right now. Let the remembrance of who you actually are, who you know yourself to be at your core, be your anchor. And at this point, I want to invite you into something that takes courage. While we've utilized this episode by exploring how you may have been miscast in someone else's story, I also want to ask, who have you cast as the villain in yours? Maybe they really did hurt you. Maybe they betrayed you, abandoned you, shamed you, overlooked you. But is there more to the story? Can you even for a moment zoom out a little differently? Can you hold the possibility that they too could have been operating from their wounds, that they too were navigating the world with limited tools, that maybe they were doing the best that they could with what they had, even if it was nowhere near what you needed? This doesn't mean you need to reconcile. This doesn't mean that you need to erase the pain. It just means that you may choose to loosen the grip of blame, because blame is heavy and it leaks. It doesn't just stay confined to the original wound. It seeps into your thoughts, into your essence, into the way you move through your day, into how tightly you clench your jaw when you see the person who can't see you, into the cautious way that you approach new relationships, into the armor you wear. Blame builds walls, not just around them, but around you too. It keeps you tethered to the pain, tethered to the narrative, tethered to a moment you didn't deserve, but also one you no longer need to relive. And the truth is, blame wants justice, but it robs you of your peace. It keeps you in a courtroom long after the verdict has been rendered. It demands your energy and your breath and your presence, and it trades these beautiful gifts for the illusion of protection. But you don't need to hold it anymore. You don't need to carry someone else's shadow just to prove a point. You're allowed to put it down. Not for them, but for you. Because your life is calling and it gets to be magnificent. So here's the seed I want to plant for you today. You will be the hero, the healer, the hurricane, the heartbreak, and the heaven to someone, depending on who you ask. But what matters is not the role you're assigned. What matters is the integrity you choose to live by, the love you elect, the light you protect, and the stories you tell yourself when the world goes quiet. You are allowed to walk away from misrepresentation without resentment. You are allowed to trust your own eyes and your own experience. You are allowed to detach with grace and move forward without bitterness. And you are invited to re-examine the characters in your own life's narrative, to forgive the ones you've hardened your heart against, to soften the edges of the stories you've told, not to excuse harm, but to set yourself free from the weight of holding on to it. You are allowed to be free. You are allowed to be miscast and still be magnificent. You are allowed to live as the most honest, vibrant, truest version of yourself, whether they see it or not. And when you're 80, 90, maybe 100, maybe you won't remember the judgment they held over your head. Maybe you'll remember the day you set it down and walked forward lighter, freer, and more in love with your life than ever before. That day can start today. So take a breath, place a hand over your heart, and choose your story, because this life, it's still yours to tell. Until next time.